You're listening to Grindhouse Courthouse. We put movies on trial to determine whether or not a film has committed too many movie misdemeanors to be considered viewable. Please rise for the honorable judge this episode.
On this very special episode of Grindhouse Courthouse, we will be tackling the most important issue that Western society has ever faced. Is the original RoboCop the definitive RoboCop experience, or is the 2014 RoboCop remake the most important story ever committed to film? Joining me today to get to the bottom of this dilemma is Dylan, who will be defending the original 1987 film, and Dave, who will be defending the 2014 remake. Both Dave and Dylan will need to convince myself, Adam, and Walker of the merits of each film across a number of categories. At the end, the three of us will deliver a verdict that will once and for all determine which movie people should think of when someone says, "Hey, do you want to watch RoboCop?" To begin, the technical merits of each film must be considered. Both parties must first provide a brief summary of the plot of their respective films. Dylan, the floor is yours.
All right, this is going to be the easiest case to argue ever. Basically, one of these movies spawned a 3-movie franchise and a reboot. The other one killed it. So, yeah, the first one was better. It was a unique vision. It had a grittiness to it that was very unique in terms of like action movies at the time. And with all of its drawbacks, it still stands up as kind of a unique bit of like 80s classic action schlock that I think people can enjoy regardless of whether they like action movies or not. Whereas the 2014 movie is just another beep in the cacophony that is reboots of the post-2010s. You could put it in the ranks of all the other ones like Predator, like Alien, like Total Recall, like Judge Dredd. Well, maybe not Judge Dredd. That one actually was an improvement, but that's not saying much. So overall, my argument is that this was the 2014 movie was trying to capitalize on what made the original great and just failed in doing so.
Yeah, so 2014 was a remake of an iconic film, I agree. And 2014, it moves away from the grittiness and gets down to the core concept of, do we trust AI? And I feel like that's a huge topic in our daily lives now. And that's why 2014 RoboCop is still interesting today.
Truly fascinating. Now, as I asked, could we have a plot summary of each film? Dylan, please begin.
Sure. RoboCop is a very the original RoboCop from 1987. It's a really simple concept that builds on really the filmmaking and the ambiance, because the script is like bare fucking bones. So here we are in the distant future of, I don't even remember, I'm going to guess like 2005 or something like that. And the world has gone to shit. So pretty accurate depiction of how the world was going to go. A very prescient prediction of what's the worst city in America. They chose Detroit. Fucking spot on. It definitely is Detroit. So they got the city right. The city is plagued by over-the-top violence and rampant corporate greed. So again, just like 100% on point, like exact predictions of what our shitty future would be like. They missed the pandemic, but you know, we can give them some leeway. So here we are in this horrible dystopian future. It's not to the point of like, you know, like The Road or some kind of like complete post-apocalyptic dystopian future. It's just like, yeah, the world is shittier in general. Just in every way, shape, and form, it's shittier. So we have basically like a neutered police force because all the government agencies are being defunded by these like pretty corrupt corporate organizations. We have Murphy, this rookie who shows up very recently onto the police force. But in the background, we know that like shit is going bad. But really what happens is we're centered on this corporation. And this corporation, does anyone remember the name of the corporation? I kind of forget it actually.
OCP.
Omnicorp.
Yeah, they're Omnicorp. They're just a bunch of assholes trying to figure out how to save a couple bucks, even if it means even further crippling the city. And one way to do that is through the implementation of what are called ED-209s. Now, this is an acronym you really need to remember because they are piece of shit mech warriors, is the best way to describe them. Kind of like chicken walkers from Star Wars, but they always work terribly. The idea is they can relieve the police force of any kind of like responsibility. They're hyper weaponized, but also just like incapable of like any kind of like critical decision making. So kind of like the police force today. And so they basically the Omnicorp wants to replace the actual police officers with these ED-209s. The problem is during the corporate display of these weaponized robots, basically, they straight up murder one of like the junior executives. But you start to get an idea of like the world at this point because everyone is freaking out, not because this man was like brutally murdered in front of them because of a complete bug in the system, but just that like, oh shit, now we're gonna have to roll back the launch date of these piece of shit robots that don't work properly. Anyway, we'll fast forward. So Detroit's a piece of shit, corrupt, and completely overrun by crime. This Murphy guy, this rookie, teams up with the woman who, this is the worst part of the movie, is his partner. Anyway, he teams up with this woman who is like just woefully incapable at her job. He gets full on like tortured to death is the best way to describe it. Like they shoot this man apart. They shoot off his hand. They shoot his legs. They shoot his knees. They shoot off his arms. It's just like, and it's extremely graphic, which is a little bit surprising if you've never seen RoboCop before. You might not assume it's like an extremely graphic movie, but it actually is. So they take this man apart. Long story short, he becomes RoboCop. He goes, he fights crime. He eventually fights Omnicorp. He has to fight the ED-209. He defeats them. And the whole plot is running alongside this idea that he's trying to regain his humanity. Because when he is more or less killed by these gangsters, when he comes back as RoboCop, there's just like nothing there. He's very robotic. He doesn't remember his partner. He doesn't really remember his family. The family shows up barely shows up even in the original. He goes to the house where they used to live, but like they're out of the picture very quickly. But the point is, and this is important for the sequel or the reboot, is that he's trying to regain his humanity because he's completely lost it by the time he comes back. And so the whole movie is him, getting vengeance. Some would say tolerant variety. Others would disagree. And
the court will recognize that it is extremely tolerant revenge in this film. Totally justified.
And also to regain his humanity. So that's the movie. And that's the movie, and it stands alone. It really didn't need a sequel. It got one. That's fine. But that's the movie.
Well stated. Dave, please walk us through RoboCop 2014.
All right, so RoboCop 2014 took a little different detour in what it was aiming for. So it also follows a cop, Alex Murphy, and they're trying to hunt down, I believe, a guns and drug dealer, I believe. And
sure. Yeah, that seems plausible.
Yeah. And so when they're on the trail, Murphy decides to go ahead and storm them without backup because he believes the cops are infiltrated by this organization, which we find out later that is true. And he basically causes his partner to almost die. He has to go to the hospital, and he's in intensive care. So we get to see Murphy being down the slumps. We get to see an actual human compared to the first one, where you have no idea what fuck Murphy is. He's just a blank slate. Forget about him. So this one, we get a little bit more. We get to see about his struggles with his daily life, like almost killing his partner. And then we gotta switch over to Omnicorp. Omnicorp's in this one as well. And the main point is, do we let AI run our defensive systems and our police force and our security in America? Because it's already happening everywhere else in the world, as we're shown. And they're doing a great job. They're killing all the terrorists. And they're killing all the kids with knives. Like, everyone that is a threat, they're wiping them out. So, Omnicorp is trying to convince the U.S. population to pass a bill to allow that to happen. And they want this to happen so they can make more money to sell robots in America. So, they are losing the bill and they decide they need a human aspect incorporated with AI to show the U.S. population that this is a feasible idea. And to do this, they need to find someone to become a cyborg, basically, which in turn turns out to be RoboCop. And they get lucky because the evil arms dealers decide to blow up Alex Murphy's car, causing Alex Murphy to be basically destroyed, except for his brain, his lungs, and his one hand, I believe.
Left hand.
Yeah.
His one hand for some reason.
Got to remember that one hand.
That's
Thank God we
important.
saved that.
I don't know why, but it is. So, Alex Murphy becomes a cyborg without any controlling AI. Like, he's not being emotionally controlled yet. He's still basically fully in control of his own emotions. And when they're running through all the tests, they realize humans fucking suck compared to AI. Like, robots are just better. So they're like, fuck the AI side. They break into his brain, take all of his emotions away, all of his humanity away, and we're left with just an empty robot. And then with this basic AI, Omnicorp shows the world that they can come back to America and protect everyone. This is the future. And then Alex Murphy and his wife, I believe, is the one that comes out and starts to stand up against the corporation. Hey, the little people. And she wants her husband back. And this is where the struggle becomes real for Alex, where he sees a little glimpse of this, and his humanity gets sparked again. And he has to fight back against the AI to regain his humanity and break free. So it's a giant battle between humanity and AI and which one should control. And in the end, he shoots the CEO.
Yeah, that happens in the first one too.
Just jumps right to the end.
Now that we have a solid, definitive, and entirely comprehensive, not to mention truthful, nobody on either party omitted any details, I'm sure, bird's eye view on what happens in each movie, I would like to invite both parties to describe in great detail both the protagonist and the antagonist in their respective films. Dylan, in your own time, please tell us all about 1987 Alex Murphy and the forces arrayed against him.
All right, Alex Murphy is like a non-character, basically. He's a vessel for RoboCop. I'm going to be dead honest. The protagonists in RoboCop are like Alex Murphy. Actually, it would have been better if Murphy just wasn't even a character. We just started with RoboCop in certain respects. Because he's introduced as a rookie cop in like a failing Detroit police force. And he's introduced to his partner who's like, I don't know what she's from, but she's a recognizable actress. It drives me crazy because I can't remember what she's from. But she's like the plainest looking like mom, which was probably like a hottie back in the 80s. I don't even know, because I genuinely don't know what hot women looked like in the 80s, because they all look like moms from the 90s. And that's the problem, is like you can't stop thinking about that when you see this woman. You're like, you look like a mom from the 90s, because that's exactly what mom from the 90s looked like. They looked like probably hot people from the 80s, I guess. Anyway, so this woman's completely incompetent, but they're trying to build up this whole relationship between these two people. By the way, his whole like meeting this woman and death occur over the course of one day.
Like an afternoon.
Or an afternoon, something like that. We basically know nothing about Alex Murphy, but here's the thing. It is fucking better than what they do in the reboot. It's better to just be like, you know what? We know what you're here for. You're here for RoboCop. You're not here for Alex Murphy. We know next to nothing. We know a lot about the bad guys, though. There's more or less two main bad guys. There's the guy who is really pushing for the ED-209s to be implemented, and he's like an upper-level executive of Omnicorp. And then there's Red Foreman. And Red Foreman is a fucking psychopath. And he's actually a good villain. Like, Red Foreman is a really good villain because he's completely insane. He's connected to this guy at Omnicorp, so he basically has free reign to do whatever he wants. Total psychopath. Tortures and murders Alex Murphy to death. And so he's actually a pretty good villain. The other villain, I get it. He's a bad guy. His motive is purely financial. He wants to make a lot of money, so he makes the police force bad. And he doesn't really care that the ED-209s are bad, crappy machines that don't work well. And I want to remember this. ED-209s, the robots that they want to replace people, suck. They don't work properly, which is why they need RoboCop, because RoboCop works properly. This will be hugely important in the like psychotic logic of the reboot, but that's the reason why this bad guy is like also really bad, because he doesn't give a shit that his robot ED-209 police force things are just useless. And that's what pits him ultimately against RoboCop, and then RoboCop kills the CEO just as he does in the reboot. But in the original, it makes sense why he kills the CEO. And those are the bad guys and good guys.
Dave,
Hey,
please
wait,
tell us all about.
Do I get to like have any input against what he was saying at all, or am I just like?
No, you don't.
We're just spitting out some facts here.
Bring
and
it on.
then We're
Bring it
calling
on.
Good?
Yeah, that's true.
This is just the fact gathering session. You're gonna have time to yell and scream at each other very shortly.
I don't want
Now,
to yell and scream. I just want to, quietly discuss.
yelling and screaming is the only thing that's allowed. Dave, please tell us all about 2014 Alex Murphy and the people he must struggle against.
So in 2014, we actually get to meet someone that actually has a little bit of history. We actually can understand him a bit. He's not just some hunk of meat that gets chewn up by shotgun shells and a bullet to the head that he survives. We actually get to meet the human behind RoboCop. He is a man with a loving wife.
Okay, he's a man. We know that much.
A loving man. The very first scene, like when we first get to see him back at his house, unfortunately, you don't get to see much, but he's going through a lot. He basically caused his partner to die almost, and he's feeling a lot of guilt. So you don't get to see much range of motion. You just get to see the down and out version of Murphy. But at least there's some motion there. We can kind of relate to that instead of just a piece of meat. So we get to learn more about Murphy and his struggles with his personal life. And the bad guys in 2014 are weirdly connected and not connected at the same time. Because you have the generic bad guy, the gun runner / drug dealer, that's paying off some of the cops.
What's his name?
Anton Valen.
Oh, fuck, Tom. I was going to make him say it.
I actually have no idea his name is. I didn't care enough about that bad guy, to be honest. He was just generic villain to me, and which is upsetting, but like, I guess we needed some generic villain for RoboCop to go fight on the streets, and that's basically what he was there for.
Do we?
And the
The judge would like to recognize that you're doing a great job. Okay, keep going.
The other bad guy is actually former Batman, CEO of Omnicorp, and he is technically the villain because he's a villain. He's not a villain because he's going for money and he's trying to tweak everything to make more profit for his company. And the only reason RoboCop wants to kill him is because he wants to sacrifice RoboCop to prevent him from showing his humanity, that he was shut off for the demonstrations for the public. He doesn't want to show the false side of his company. So like, he's not like evil per se, but he's just kind of a douche. But
Is that why he wants to kill?
Is that his
Alex
motive?
Murphy?
so that's the way he does, because RoboCop would come back with his humanity and be like, guys, they completely locked me down, and it was just AI that was fighting on the streets. It wasn't RoboCop. And if he exposes that, the bill probably would not have been passed, because the Senate would be like, you guys are lying to us, or you have to shut RoboCop up somehow. You can't flip-flop. You would lose the bill then, right? Then he would lose all his...
But that makes a lot of sense, and I don't think that's what they said.
Yeah, I don't.
What? That's basically what they're going for.
No, they want him
How they
dead
not?
so that he's a martyr.
Yeah, to hide the fact that he came back. It's all about the bill. That's exactly why he wanted that. Because if he came back, they're like, oh man, because it's like RoboCop's in the building. They're like, oh well, that's not good for us, because then the bill is about to pass, right? That's the whole point of that. That's the reason they want him dead.
But I think they also want the extra sympathy, don't they? Because he just sacrificed himself.
That's to get good publicity for
Right.
the company. If they just, oh man, RoboCop had an error, we gotta shut him down, people will be questioning that up and down. At this point, the only person that's questioning is his wife,
Right.
which triggers him to come back from the fight. And all that jazz.
Okay, fair enough.
So I don't know. The CEO, he is a villain, kinda, but he was a dynamic villain for me. Had a lot more going on. The only thing I wasn't too sure about is the weird connection between Omnicorp and the police. Because the police didn't talk to like the CEO, they talked to like the mid-level army dude. So I feel like he was more the connection to evil. But so those are your main antagonists.
So every character in the film. Truly fascinating and outstanding presentation by both parties. At this time, I would like to call a recess and invite the jury members to pose any questions that they may have. A jury, the floor is yours.
I'm so confused.
Like, so let's just start with the protagonist first, right? So we'll focus on that, Walker.
Okay.
So you have Peter Weller. Which movie portrayed his humanity better? 1987 or
I think
2014?
I can answer that
Can you
one
imagine
definitively.
if Peter Weller played
Peter Weller
2014? That'd been awesome.
was not RoboCop in 2014. Therefore, by definition, he is the better Peter Weller in 1987.
Peter Weller played Alex Murphy in 1987. Sorry, I've recognized my mistake now with what I just said.
Thank you.
Apologize.
Thank you.
We get
Not
a quick
forgiven.
introduction of Alex Murphy, but we also get to see something about him within that like first 10 minutes of seeing him. He does have some character traits. He gets a connection with his partner right off the very beginning. And even how he approaches the villains when he knows he's about to die. There's still some human characteristics that you can tie to see that he is a good man. What I found was from the original, we're meant to believe that we're not just watching some actor in a suit, but we're actually watching Murphy as that machine. That's how I got caught up in the original RoboCop, and I could be completely wrong. So I'm curious how Walker felt about the main protagonist.
I think I think it goes with like what Dylan said at the beginning. The RoboCop in the original one is essentially a non-character. Like his only motivation is what was programmed into him. And the only reason he tries to take down the leader of Omnicorp in the original is because he was doing stuff that was illegal, and that was like in his programming. So his motivation to take down Omnicorp is the same as his motivation is to stop somebody from raping a woman and shooting their dick off.
Can we just get clarification? That guy wasn't the CEO of Omnicorp. His father was.
Okay, so yeah, sorry.
His father is the boss, and he fired him after.
He's a CO.
Yeah.
Allowed him.
So in that sense, is like the motivations of his character is like it's cleaner. And in the 2014 one, I can see why they're like, let's give him some more depth. Let's see what his actual motivations are. But it gets so muddied and confusing. And like, I don't really care about his relationship with his stupid kid. He's a Red Wings fan, so who cares anyway? So
I agree totally.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
It would have been better if the kid was not involved and he's just his wife. Just his wife would have been perfect.
But do they need that? Does 2014 need that element? Do they need to introduce his family as much as they did? Because in comparison to the original, it was just memories of his family. He knew he had a family that he needed to go back to, or he had this different life. And that was us watching Alex Murphy gain his humanity back because, yes, he was a robot cop becoming more and more human throughout the movie because he was having these connections. But with 2014, what do we have? I still don't clearly understand his motives.
The problem is the old one wasn't dealing with the same idea because the new one's all about should we let AI run the police force? And in 1987, that wasn't even a question. It was just like, we need someone who's fucking better and doesn't matter what it is. We just need more firepower, basically.
Objection.
Overruled.
So we needed to see the more humanity because we need to have that balance, right?
The
Everything
problem
balance.
is not AI versus humanity. The problem is robots don't feel bad after shooting kids with knives.
Yeah.
Don't hold a fucking knife.
But here's the other problem.
Did you guys like that connection?
I don't think many soldiers do either.
Did you guys like that connection? Where the
I'd
kid
like to-
that was holding the knife was named Navid, and his kid was named David. Like, what the fuck?
I'm sure that's just a coincidence and not ham-fisted attempts at making you feel something in this shitty remake.
Can we look at the antagonists? Because, like, yeah, we'll bounce back and forth between the protagonists and, like, their motives and who did the better portrayal. But, like, I think all of us were confused when we watched the 2014 of, like, what the motivation for the antagonists were throughout this movie. Yes, we had the crime lord that was hustling drugs and guns, whatever. But that, again, felt shoehorned in, like it just needed to happen. It needed to provide some closure for the original case that Alex Murphy was working on. But then it could have just
He
ended
was there
there.
to show how badass RoboCop can be.
Sure, cool, neat, but as a story, it could have ended at that point, but then we decide to go from a third act ending to a fourth act where it's just like, you know what? Maybe the CEO of Omnicorp is actually bad. Let's explore that for the next 20 to 30 minutes at the very end of the movie, because we never had that initially. So I need to understand what 2014's antagonist, the CEO, what his motivation was, because throughout that movie,
hang on.
we
We're
were
getting ahead of ourselves,
pausing.
Adam, that's the
Okay.
next. That's the next scene.
I'm so flustered with this movie. Like I need
with
to know
the
the answers.
humanity.
His
versus-
motivation was to convince the Senate to pass the bill so that he can
Okay.
sell more robots to America.
that robots feel bad after they kill kids.
Yeah, and people need to see that humanity for that
But-
brief moment. To
but
convince
wasn't-
them that it's okay to have robots controlling everything.
But wasn't the CEO the one that says, you know what, dial down the human aspect, because we just need something that's functioning. We need to get this out into the public to see that we have a solid product
That was
right
a
now.
shell. Hey, we showed the humanity side when they first get him out. It's like, oh yeah, he's a human, half robot, and all that stuff. And then it's like, okay, it's not working that great. We gotta
Yep.
cut that out. We gotta put all the AI, just block his emotions, show how good he is without showing that he's actually losing his humanity. It's like a
I need
So if
I
they
need to
did that,
raise a
if
very
they did
important
that
point.
right from the beginning, that would have been great. But they do it like 3 different times.
yeah. They think that it's going to work out.
Yes.
It's because the doctor, Commissioner Gordon, I believe,
Yeah, I think that's
comes
his name.
in, and
Yeah, Commissioner Gordon.
Or
Dr.
Twinkle
Commissioner
Toes.
Gordon.
Court-
Twinkle Toes.
I just want to step aside.
The
and
court
say,
will not recognize any correlation to Batman whatsoever. Now,
Commissioner
there are
Gordon
two
played a great
major.
role, but he was the factor that made him keep his humanity in the beginning, because he wouldn't have done that unless he could do that, right? So that whole
There are two
Doctor-
major things that happen in the RoboCop remake.
Yeah.
First thing that we've talked a lot about is they remove his emotions, and by the time you get to the end of the film, that seems to be the central key point: is he can't feel anything, so it's not okay when he shoots a kid. But earlier on, when he's not performing in the simulations as fast as a robot, it isn't that they're taking away his emotions; they're taking away his free will.
yeah, that too.
That does not come up at any point throughout the rest of the film.
Yeah.
They're
They
okay
talk
with him
about
not
it.
having free will. He just has to feel it.
No, they even talked about how it's like a fake feel. It was like it's going to. They talk about that how all those sensations and like the feelings of making decisions is all fake for him. They have that little
So
blurb.
they've removed his free will. At that point, he's just a robot who
Yes.
feels. He's
And
not in
that's-
control of any of his
that's
actions.
The quote. That's what they.
Why isn't that the central point of the film?
Yeah.
Well, that's why the CEO kills him, because you can't let that go out. That's
But
the
that
whole point
happens
why
at
he
like
has
an
to-
hour and 20 minutes in.
Yeah. What do you mean?
When he comes back to life, he is just himself,
Yeah.
just with, one arm, a set of lungs, and his head. But he's still himself. Like, he's still him, right?
He's him with AI to improve his aim and shit like that.
Yeah,
That
shit like
bullshit.
that. Whereas in the
Yeah.
original, he's not him. Like, he doesn't even remember his name. He doesn't remember shit. So the whole movie is like a steady progression to get back to even just a minuscule component of his humanity. So the
Yeah,
reason...
and 2014 is a build-up going, I have my humanity, I'm incorporating AI, and then it
And
doesn't
then,
work.
like,
So they went
3
full
setbacks.
robot, and then come back to humanity. It's just a little curve.
No, but he just has emotions. He still doesn't have free will. There is a physical chip that's taken out of his brain.
No, he comes back with free will.
It doesn't get put back in. He might feel things, but he's still not in control of his action.
No, I think later on he does.
Well, yeah, in the end he does.
When he sees his wife, when she runs up to him, when he's like riding his bike, and they're in their office, like, oh, it's gonna happen sooner or later, and then like it happens on the screen, and that like clicks it for him,
He gets his emotions back.
and his humanity is fighting back. Yeah,
I think the
No, he
only
gets
way,
his emotions.
but the only way they would
It's
have
not
known,
his humanity.
But the only
Why
way
not?
the only way they would have known if the experiment was a success is if he shot a little Arab kid and then felt bad about it afterwards. It's the only way. Control.
And they never do that.
Yeah,
the
they
never do it.
control groups and stuff too. Like shooting like non-Arab kids and seeing if he feels bad. Shooting some Arab kids who aren't holding knives. It's
You
a
need that.
scientific
And
method.
let the record show,
I can't argue
in
that.
the
I'm sorry.
2014 remake, the ED-209s shoot those kids, no problem. They carry out their tasks perfectly.
They don't
So,
shoot kids.
a central facet of both the that ED-209 fucking annihilated that kid.
Yeah.
A central facet of both the 1987 RoboCop and 2014 RoboCop is Alex Murphy's struggle to reclaim his identity and, indeed, his humanity. Using specific plot points to bolster your argument, please explain how your version of RoboCop presents and dissects this issue. Dylan, as always, the court is compelled to lead with your argument.
Can you please reread that undergraduate essay prompt again? Holy shit.
It's basically what we're just talking about right now, the same thing.
It's exactly what you're talking about. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
I want to hear about how your movie deals with RoboCop's search for humanity, because that is key to both films.
Oh, it's really simple. He gets shot in the head. He forgets everything. Doesn't remember who he is, doesn't remember anything. When he starts to access database materials, he meets his partner for half an afternoon again. He goes through his old house and looks at pictures. He starts to remember that he actually is, in fact, a human. Because up to this point, he's not a human. He's a robot. He's like 100% a robot. And I guess like in the 80s, the logic was kind of like they were using the human brain as like the best processor that they could kind of thing. So the whole movie is just him slowly recovering memory until finally the very final scene in the movie is him correcting somebody saying, or just saying, I'm Murph, reclaiming his identity.
So quick question. If you get a bullet to the brain, how's the brain still functioning?
You ever heard of Phineas Gage?
Every time. Every time.
I bring this up a lot.
I know. I think you've used this argument against me. That's why I'm laughing at it, because I'm on the other side of this.
The court will recognize the existence of Phineas Gage. It is possible to survive a gunshot to the
Also,
brain.
on the most extreme videos, remember those like shitty like compilation TV shows back in the 90s? There was definitely a kid who got a shotgun blast to the head and he survived. So it happens, Dave.
But you also had massive blood loss. There's no more blood in that body. He was dragged. So
Yeah.
do we know how long the brain can survive?
Do we know how long
blood?
the lungs can survive outside of the human chest?
Forever when it's encased by armor.
Why did they only save his hand? He had a leg and a torso and an arm when he went in.
Yeah,
that
they
because-
clearly showed a picture of him. He was like half a human when he went in there.
But they just remove parts. But that's the
Was
thing.
that just
like,
because they shot off his hand in the first one, so in the second one they're being kind of cheeky and they're like, look, we saved it this time, guys.
Yeah, you got it on the nose.
That's
God
exactly
damn,
correct.
that's amazing.
Yeah. Wow, 2014. That just
Boy,
does it
what
for
are
me
these-
now.
Yeah, took it to the
Or where he
next
says
level.
I wouldn't buy that for $1. Fuck, I wanted to throw something.
Yeah, did you like all the references when they just started naming things from the movie that you remember?
No. I did enjoy though when they removed his body, like his components, and you just saw like his lungs.
We all thought that was the coolest
legit.
part too. Yeah, we agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the only moment
no
we
contest.
weren't shouting at the screen.
Now, Dave, I would also like to hear about 2014 Alex Murphy's struggle to reclaim his humanity. Can you just break that down just real quick? Just
So when he
really
loses
quickly,
his
just break that
humanity,
down.
I don't think he takes a chip out of his brain like you're talking about.
Yeah,
Was he
Gary
taking-
Oldman takes a chip out of his brain.
Dr. Commissioner Gordner
So
takes a chip out.
The court will not recognize any connection to Batman.
So he takes the chip out,
Yeah.
and basically what you're telling me is he took a chip out, so,
So-
there's less
So the chip,
mechanical parts in his brain, so it's becoming more natural. Yes.
No.
No, they take away his free will. Later,
No.
they turn down his dopamine levels, and then his emotions disappear or something. It's not like he'd just be a puddle on the floor with his brain misfiring because there's literally no dopamine
It's
in
that scene
it.
when he walks
But,
past his kid and doesn't like acknowledge his kid or his wife.
Yeah, when he first goes to
Yeah.
the public. Yeah. So yeah, they lock him down by removing that chip somehow, or do they remove it or implant it?
I think they
They
removed
removed
it.
They actually
Did you
remove
not
it.
watch the movie?
I can't remember that specific scene.
That's pretty
The
good.
court will wait for an answer. Did you watch this film?
Because
I
I
can't
remember
it
this.
took an hour to put it in.
I remember this vividly, and I think it's just because we were arguing so much about like what was happening, what they were doing, and like what this all entails. Because yeah, they have the surgery
I also-
because. Yeah, go ahead. This is your case.
I also think they don't understand how the brain works fully. Like they're just like taking random stabs at how that would actually work. Because like
I think that's abundantly clear in
yeah,
both films.
we have to like give it some room there. You can't just be like, oh yeah, the chip that ruins everything.
Yeah. And to be fair, didn't his dopamine levels like really fuck up when they downloaded the database of like police shit
Security
into his
database.
brain, and then he saw his
That's-
own crime scene, and that's actually what tripped the dopamine problem?
No, they forcibly went in and removed his dopamine levels because they have that control over the human body, and they're not just like using that as medical technology across.
Why
the
couldn't they
planet.
just-
They're only putting it inside.
But
a
that
robot.
but that still the he was still okay at that point. It was his seeing the crime scene photos that sent him over the edge.
Yeah.
Oh, you went over the edge, but to mitigate that problem, they turned down his dopamine.
Right.
Yeah.
So he
They removed his emotions.
That was just
So then what is so what does the chip do that they took out? Because couldn't you just like
That
turn?
removes his free will, so he shoots people faster
But I thought
in
the
simulation.
I
So
thought
they
the free
removed the
will
chip,
was
and he
the,
lost
the
his free will, but over time his brain slowly healed itself. And
Yeah,
that's-
I think
No,
that's-
No.
And then he
just
saw his
got
wife,
emotions.
and that was the spark that brought his
he
brain
was
pumping,
horny. That's the
pumping
only
hard,
reason why.
and he came back.
He was really
horniness
horny.
is
He's
the
like, I wish I had a
most
robot
powerful
dick.
of human emotions.
Yeah, there you go.
It goes horniness,
If you're horny enough, you can do anything.
Love.
Okay.
That's really
sadness.
that's how it works.
To summarize
Horniness
Dave's
again.
point. Sorry, I'm just gonna skip over Dylan saying horny so many times.
No, I want to hear this.
To summarize Dave's point, we start out human, and then explosion happens. He becomes robot, so no human,
Part
high
human, part robot.
Okay, and due to how they're trying to develop RoboCop, they have to remove the human element from it, so he is full robot. And then throughout the rest of the movie, so we're about maybe an hour and 20 minutes into this movie when they decide to focus on robot going back to human, correct?
I think that's what
Yeah,
it is.
the only reason so they do this to kind of call out the corporation. They're going to show that corporations are dirty and manipulative, and they are controlling the situation for their own agenda, for the bill in the Senate.
Hey Tom, that's a good
So-
segue to the next thing.
The Senate? Star Wars?
Okay.
Okay, no, yeah.
Ultimately, one of the most important questions that anyone can ask of any narrative boils down to, is this a story that needs to be told? To reframe this question in the context of cinema and indeed our current debate, what was the reason for each RoboCop film to be made? What purpose does it serve? If it helps to focus the discussion, what audience were the filmmakers targeting? Please note that any variation of the following arguments will result in a premature termination of this discussion, and the opposing film will automatically be declared the victor, independent of any result delivered by the judge and jury. Not every story needs to have a point. Entertainment doesn't always have to be focused and directed. This film is designed to appeal to the broadest audience possible, and that's a good thing. Dylan, please tell us exactly what 1987 RoboCop is and why it needed to be made.
You remember the Occupy Wall Street protests?
I am very familiar, yes.
That's why this movie exists.
Dave, please tell us exactly what 2014 RoboCop is and why it needed to be made.
Yeah, you remember when Microsoft came out with the Kinect and had the microphone always listening to you?
I
During
do.
your home,
The
listen,
court,
yeah?
the court does remember, yes.
That's why this movie was built, because AI is everywhere and it's controlling us. We need to have that conversation again.
Pitch, thrown,
Amazing.
hit, returned. Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Before we move on to the final phase, we will take a short recess. Jury members, and indeed myself, we may begin peppering Dave and Dylan with questions. Who gives a shit about 2014 RoboCop? The court recognizes that Dave has raised his hand. There's no action in this movie that's especially good. The human drama elements fall completely flat. The pacing is shitty. The special effects are kind of okay.
The human interactions, whoa. Between him and his wife works. That's good interaction.
Were you compelled though, Dave? Like,
Name one thing between them that really worked for you, that stood out among all other movies that you've seen, that you're gonna stand on this hill and die. That's what I want
I
to hear.
won't stand on the hill and die. I'm just saying it wasn't. It was there. It worked. It wasn't bad.
In what
between him
way
and his wife.
did
him
it
and his
work?
kid was fucking awful. I agree with that one. That was.
The kid was a fucking dead-eyed psycho. I don't know why they had him in the movie.
And I would just like to point out that all child actors have that quality. So it's not unique.
This
to
is a
movie.
returning.
That's true.
Except
That
for
is-
Anakin.
that is
For this
true.
movie.
Young Anakin was the best actor.
Dave,
Adam
don't,
agrees
Dave,
with me 100%.
don't
Oh,
do
boy.
this, Dave.
Adam, that's a
agreed with
weird
me.
opinion.
Adam loved that movie.
Adam, I don't
Yeah,
know if
sorry.
that's defensible.
I'm ready to leave.
So, if you were there and RoboCop is being this perfect cop that's a robot, and you found out it was all a lie, there was no humanity at all, how devastated would you be? Would you be as devastated as Adam was when he found out Barney was not actually a dinosaur and was a human inside a costume? That's how upset you would be.
I don't know.
I'd be more upset that like my robot police officer has no free will versus he didn't feel bad when he shot that kid.
Well, that's the other
Okay,
thing, though, right?
Can we please
There's
just
no
address the motivation of the two Omnicorps, because they're very
Yeah.
different,
Yeah.
and that's what I tried to make you segue to, Tom. And you totally fucking missed the ball. He was talking about the Omnicorp at that point, so I guess I have to do it myself.
I think I picked it up. But please continue.
Okay, I'm gonna explain. Dave, do you want me to explain both, or do you want me to just explain the Omnicorp motivation in mine, and then let you explain?
No, try to explain both, and
Okay.
I will correct you.
Okay, sure.
The easier route.
Omnicorp,
Dave there.
Omnicorp's okay. In the original, here is Omnicorp's motivation. There are two upper level executives. I don't remember either names. Doesn't really matter. They're both basically trying to do the same thing, which is replace human cops with robots and make a shitload of money. The only difference between the two of them is the kind of robots that they want to use. The one guy wants to use the shitty ED-209s that don't work. They can't tell the difference between bad guy and good guy. They murdered an executive in the executive suite. The other guy
That
says,
was just a little hiccup.
yeah, little hiccup. That's what. But anyway, it was bad enough to then have the contract more or less sent to a more junior executive who came up with the RoboCop idea. This guy's not a good guy either. He's just looking to make a bunch of money, but it actually just by pure accident turned out that this RoboCop is a little bit more effective because it at least has a component of humanity in it, even if at the beginning you don't really get it. It builds over the...
So hold on.
yeah.
RoboCop was very effective at the start of that movie, and then he basically was fighting everyone at the end. Was that?
Well, but he couldn't arrest the really bad guys, which is Omnicorp, because he had that
He
protocol.
still couldn't do that even with his humanity.
No, he
He
regained
still
it at the
failed
end.
he still failed. He was only able to arrest them, which pushed him out the window.
When he
Anyway.
fired.
When he got fired. So
Yeah.
it's still his humanity didn't help him at all.
But he wouldn't have gone
closed.
into like an assault of Omnicorp if he hadn't kind of got it back. He just couldn't do that specific protocol. He already knew the guy needed to be arrested. Anyway, there's not a huge leap in his humanity in the original. It's very basic, like what he gets back. It's not like he's Murphy again. He's definitely not, but he's at least more than what he was at the beginning. Anyway. Okay, so the second one, the Omnicorp motivation, I think when we were watching, us four that watched together, we all kind of agreed with Omnicorp at the beginning. So the beginning,
Yeah.
it's
Completely correct.
it's like Iraq, right? Like they're in the war zone, and the terrorists are like attacking the ED-209s, and it's like literally the exact same robot. The ED-209s seem to respond pretty exact like they're supposed to. The main scene is like a little kid who's like, I don't know, like 12 or something. He rushes out with a knife, and this ED-209 just absolutely annihilates this kid with like...
He asked him to drop it, and the kid refuses to.
Right.
That's why he's
Even more so.
Yep.
So then it comes back, and the senator is like really pushing, like, we can't have these police. Like, look, they kill kids, and what's worse, they don't even feel bad after. It's like, why is that the deciding factor? Fine, whatever. So then the motivation is, okay, we can't use the ED-209s. We have to find something that feels bad after they kill kids. So that's why they get the RoboCop, basically, right? Is because of this weird rule that...
It's not a rule.
Like,
Americans are worried that Omnicorp will come with their robots and control everything because there's no humanity, right? Like it's going to be all on their side. It's all being controlled by them.
Right. And
They also-
I don't think that was-
Omnicorp makes the great point, like, yeah, maybe it can't feel bad after, but it also can't commit, like, racial discrimination and, all these other
so
things.
Omnicorp, that's why I was like, the CEO is not really a bad guy for me, because like the only bad thing he does is to manipulate the media with RoboCop, because
Right.
he's just using RoboCop to get the bill passed, to get his army of robots in, and the only reason that he's really bad is because he wants to kill basically an innocent cop after he was done with him, because it would expose his lie.
But what was the lie? Because what was the lie?
The lie is that RoboCop, when he was doing great and he was on TV, he was promoting everything, he was basically just a robot and not a human robot. That was the huge thing.
Kind of, though.
That's why Commissioner Gordon was super upset. He's like, I don't want to do this and all that stuff, right?
But it
He
would.
was really pushing against it. And then as soon as they take out his free will and his emotions, that's when RoboCop was like, oh, arresting the guy right out there. In the first 3 seconds being introduced, everyone's clapping, everyone's cheering. The bill passes, but RoboCop is getting his humanity back after that.
Right, but even before this, he'd gone on his tolerant revenge spree and killed all those guys who killed him.
Yeah, he was doing. Was he?
Yeah, he killed they
don't think
didn't
he
care
was-
about this guy. Like, they didn't defend him, but they didn't care.
Which guy?
The guy who blew him up.
He wasn't he full robot when he did that?
No, they
No,
didn't
when he saw-
program
when-
it. They didn't program that in him. He recovered the memory.
Oh, right.
And then he even went and then arrested his
But that was showing that he was outside of the system, basically, because he was doing that without getting the
Omnicorp.
permission from higher up, right? That was the huge thing there too.
Right. So my
gotta
point is,
follow a line.
they should have just kept going with it. It made their reaction made no sense because he just took down a drug cartel, exposed a bunch of corrupt cops, and all of this worked in the favor of the corporation. Except the corporation went, "Yeah, we got to kill him now,"
Yeah.
and they never
Yeah,
explained
because, like-
why did they do that. He
Yeah,
just did
Dave, what
everything
you're
that would
saying is-
benefit the corporation. They don't care about the cops, the corrupt cops, or this random drug dealer.
If you keep tying it back to the bill, they want an efficient machine that feels. They got that with this scenario. Alex Murphy was able to have emotion because he was getting his revenge, right? There was some type of humanity like when he was Robot Cop doing this action. But then the corporation decided, like, no, this is out of control. We don't have any control of him. We need to shut him down, and that's when they turn evil for us in this movie.
But it was like that.
It just doesn't line
just
up.
started being
Yeah,
evil
it was instant.
because the other bad guys were all dead.
Yeah, was he still? I feel like I got to rewatch this movie now. God damn.
I think I just convinced you of my point here. Because they had a perfectly legitimate reason to have the RoboCop and to do everything they were doing, and it all made sense right up until the point where they made the corporation now again the bad guy, because
But the thing is, when RoboCop was first introduced to the public, he was already lost all his free control. So was that before or after all that?
that was before.
So he did all that stuff before and then was introduced to the public.
No, he's introduced to
Because when
the
he was
public.
introduced to the public, he had no humanity there.
Right. That's
So then if
that's
that all
because the
happened
dopamine.
after, then he had
the
no
whole-
humanity then.
He recovered it.
No, he didn't. Not fully.
Well, why was he going on a rampage to kill his killers?
Because that was his full-out robot brain going.
No, that wasn't.
But it's his memories.
When he comes out onto the stage,
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you're
that
thinking of,
point,
there's two different moments. So let's break this scene down because there's a lot. He starts out with his human side intact. They
Totally.
decide to upload all of the security information, the database into him. It's too overwhelming. He has too many emotions and he can't function, so they have to shut down the human side, but they need to continue with the presentation to get this product out. So what they do is they revert him to full robot mode. During robot mode, that's where you get the showcase of him taking down the 96-year-old pedophile criminal in the stand.
Also, what kind of like wanted murderer goes to like a fucking police conference? Like, let's hear what they gotta say. It's like, yeah, you're a fucking wanted murderer, dude.
You know, it probably at that
Some
stage.
kind of robot cop, huh?
Some
I
new
could beat the
RoboCop that can
charges.
scan faces, huh? Better show my face up there.
So after that, he continues as 100% robot and starts taking down
That's when
crime.
he takes down the cartel and stuff.
No,
right?
no, not yet. He's taken down crime, he's hunting people, and then I think it's after he has his interaction with his wife, the whole son thing, then he starts going towards, oh, you know what? I actually have footage of my killer, me dying, the connection between the police force. I need to start taking these people down because I am now 25% human, 75% robot. So he starts gaining his humanity at that point. Once
And
that's
the CEO
done,
wasn't upset about that. They're in the office.
the CEO gets pissed right after that because
hold on.
once he you gotta let me keep going. You gotta let me keep going. I'm telling you the full section that you're arguing right now.
But you're
once
saying they were upset that he was doing that he was solving his own murder, right?
Once he
They
takes
weren't though.
The court will let Adam tell Dave what he thinks.
Thank you, Judge. This feels really good to be on the same side as the judge for once. Once he takes down the drug cartel, he connects it back to the police officers, the dirty police officer, and he's about to take in the lead cop, like the,
Chief.
I don't know what they're called.
Chief.
Thank you, Dylan. The chief. And once that happens, then the corporation shuts him down because I think there's like an ulterior
Who in
motive.
the corporation shuts them down?
Rorschach shuts him
wasn't
down.
the CEO.
Rorschach.
Was it
It
Rorschach?
wasn't the CEO.
Okay.
It was a fucking douchebag that was like always against RoboCop.
Okay, now from this, make your argument, Dave. Because I still like.
Before that, when RoboCop was solving his own murder, Jay, I don't know what his actual name in the fucking movie was, but How to Train Your Dragon, that guy, he was like, "This is the best thing we could see." He's solving his own murder, and he's like, "That's what we need," and they ran with that
Right up until they didn't, though.
until the army dude shut him down.
Yeah, but who gave that order
Why?
to shut him down? So it was Rorschach.
No, the army
but who
dude
was
did it on
above?
his own.
He did it by himself.
He did it on his
Did he?
own because they're involved. But he did call the CEO and say like, "Hey, I did this," and the CEO was like, "Yeah, okay, good move, man." And then they're
Yeah.
like, "Yep, we definitely got to kill RoboCop now for no
So-
They gotta
reason."
cover his tracks.
Yeah.
So the
So
CEO
right
is
because-
covering his own employee's ass.
But
So
the
the CEO
CEO
is actually a really good guy. He's protecting his own employees.
But the CEO had no connection to like these other crime, like or the corrupt cops, right? Like in the original one, the CEO
I don't
or the
think so.
the big shot, he was employing
Yeah.
the drug dealer to do his kind of his dirty work.
But
And the
I
other
think
Michael
the
Keaton,
cops-
Michael Keaton was completely clandestine. He had no ties to any funny business. So
and
I
that's
don't-
why I think that I was confused with the connection there. But I think it's the guy below, the army dude, had the connection with the cops. Because that's who the cops call was him.
Did they?
And then the CEO was just
Is
like
that-
trying, yeah. The CEO doesn't get the
No,
call.
did the cops call him, or did he just watch everything
cops-
unfolding through RoboCop's
No, the cops
eyes?
call him. It even shows that when RoboCops walk in, it's like encrypted call. And the cops, the chief of the police is calling that dude.
Right.
And then he shuts RoboCop down.
Are they, I don't think they're calling Rorschach.
Yeah. And the CEO, I think, is just in a bad spot. He's like, oh, shit, my employee did all of this, and now we got to cover it up to save our asses. Because it's going to fall on him no matter what, right? That's why he has to kill RoboCop. It's another reason. Or else his bill won't pass.
so this is essentially
That's why I was confused with the connection between Omnicorp and the cops. That's why I thought it was so fucked up with that connection.
Where did it show encrypted call?
When he's walking in.
I do remember
On
this now.
RoboCop's heads-up display.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like
So
scanning the computer.
RoboCop was making the encrypted
No,
call.
no.
He was scanning your computer or phone, and it pulls up and is like making an encryption call. Encrypted call.
Yeah, no, but wasn't it because the chief
He
of the
was
police
calling
was,
the dude.
no. It was because the chief of the police was contacting the drug cartels.
Not the CEO.
No.
No.
Oh no, that's what it was. It was because so remember right before RoboCop goes in to have this in the dark shootout with all the drug dealers. Right before that, the evil drug cartel says, "Oh God, RoboCop's on his way because someone didn't turn off their phone," and it's one of the police officers, the dirty police officer, that has an encrypted call that he's making with the chief. That's
That
it.
wasn't the phone,
She
though.
wasn't
That
the
was
chief. The chief wasn't
unencrypted.
connect. No, the chief wasn't connected with Omnicorp in any way.
So
No,
I'd
we
like
gotta
to
go back
step
and look
in
at that.
here.
okay.
Because that I don't think is right. Because she was definitely not calling him. Because that guy had an unencrypted phone, and it was an encrypted call. That right there is canceled out.
No, I think it's the level of dirtiness. So you have like dirty level cop that gets Alex Murphy killed. They're working with the drug gun cartel who now has a connection with the chief And that's where the connection is. It doesn't go from the cops to Omnicorp in this film, unlike what it did in the original.
Yeah.
You think it stops there? Okay, that might make
I
sense
think,
then.
yeah, I think that's where it is. But like, and then that's where my confusion comes in
And
with
then
why
the guy
is this?
underneath the CEO, the army dude, was the one
Yeah.
that pulled the plug.
Okay,
And then that would look bad on the corporation. That's why he has to get rid of RoboCop now to cover his
what-
ass.
What comes back to Omnicorp in the 2014 version on this one?
yeah,
Outside of military man, like the drug dealers and the corrupt cops, that's all happening completely independent of Omnicorp. It's not like
Yeah, so-
the CEO is there tied in doing the drugs, selling the drugs,
The CEO could have
sniffing
just
the
the
drugs,
CEO could have just
putting
like
the drugs up his butt.
so like you have to
Well, that's
take
the
it
point,
from
yeah, because
Omnicorp's
up
perspective. though.
until Rorschach stops RoboCop, Omnicorp is not involved because
Yes.
he just arrested or whatever to the two dirty cops, and he was going after the chief of police.
Yeah.
And up until Rorschach stopped him, Omnicorp was not involved in this at all. It's not like the first
That's
one
why I
where
thought
he's
the call was going to him.
No. I think it's Rorschach's.
We don't
I
know for
can't remember his character's name. And this is the thing. This is what that movie did not make clear, and that's why we're having this large
Right.
conversation about it. So that's why I'm saying 2014 did not do a good job of establishing their villains and their motives for it. So if Rorschach got, and we can just assume Rorschach was jealous that this new robot is making him obsolete and his task force obsolete. So he shut it down because it was being more efficient and it was doing what the bill was asking for. It wanted a humane robot cop, and it was just doing that. But it was going up to a level that maybe the public wasn't ready to see, so he decided to shut it down himself. That's my assumption with it. But again,
But
why?
in the logic of the movie, Adam, we have to admit that at least for the screenwriters, it was clear that Omnicorp was now inculpated in this process at some point,
Yes.
right? It has the movie doesn't work otherwise. They just didn't
Yeah.
show it effectively. So Dave has to be right in the fact that
Don't get me
at
wrong.
this
I'm not trying to
scene-
say that this was a good way to write it, but that's like the only way that would come out.
Yeah.
decent.
But our main
The court
critique,
records will show that you think this is a good way to write it. I think we need to make that.
You
so
are
our
trying
main
to
critique
perfectly
was like
It's a masterpiece.
our main critique is like it seemed like two people wrote two different movies, and they're like, you have to include Omnicorp in the first part because he's the bad guy in the second part. And so two people wrote a movie unto itself, and the connections between the two antagonists are just like one on the one side you have the criminal element of Detroit, which includes the cops, and then on the other side you have Omnicorp, and they're kind of smushed together, but they're not integrated together. Whereas in the first one,
Yeah.
the bad guys work for Omnicorp, and Omnicorp is fucking over the police for specific monetary gain.
Yeah.
Whereas in this one,
Yeah, but
they're not trying to do that at all.
I think they're trying to show the Omnicorp to be genuinely better. Like I would picture Google as them.
So
You can swap them in and out.
with
Yeah.
that though, why did the CEO point a gun at Alex Murphy's family on the rooftop, like on the helipad?
Prove
Like,
that the AI was in control.
but like, I
That's
just
to
don't
give the
understand
audience.
that.
Okay.
Oh look,
Why did
we
he
can
need to
beat
prove that
AI.
point?
That was the whole point there. It was
Weak.
cheating. Like
It's
it
weak.
wasn't done well, but that was their point. And yeah, and everyone threw up on the screen when it happened.
Yeah.
But that was their shitty point.
So, yeah, I'd like to make a clear point here. We just spent the last 4 hours talking about why RoboCop 2014 doesn't make sense. We spent approximately 30 seconds saying that RoboCop 1987 has no problems with the plot whatsoever. You're never confused. You're never concerned about what's happening because it doesn't make any sense.
With the exception
Plot
of the
is like
fucking
a
partner.
one
The
word
partner
plot
makes
on that
no
first one.
sense. The partner relationship makes no sense. And they still didn't fix it in the 2014 one. They did better because they didn't have like a
better.
brand new cop with his half a day partner. Like at least these guys were like intimately like involved with each other's lives. But it was still like the partner still barely did anything. Like Omar was almost
Oh no, he saves RoboCop's life by magically being in the.
I know, but
building
he comes
at
and
the right
goes,
time?
right? Like he comes and goes. He's not an integral.
Omar is
component.
criminally underused.
Yeah.
My final remark is there could have been.
Oh,
a
closing
great show.
statements? Okay,
No,
all right,
no, wait.
closing
I have
statements.
a
Here we
question
go.
about
Okay.
the humanity versus robot logic in the 2014 one. So, in the original, a robot just makes him a better cop. pretty much every way, right? Like he's just
He could just aim
bulletproof and, you know, he can take on whatever because it's just an improvement. And there's nothing like him, right? There's the ED-209s, which are pieces of shit. Like they're garbage. They can't do anything right. Okay, so that's the logic
Stairs are
in the
their
first
mortal
one.
enemies.
Right. And then so
Stairs.
when they face off, of course RoboCop destroys the ED-209 because it can't even walk downstairs properly. But in the new one, the robots are initially, in the very beginning, they're initially cast as more effective tactically, right? Remember the scene where he's training and he hesitates to shoot the bad guy or whatever? And they're like, oh, fuck, he has a delay in his response time.
Wouldn't buy that for $1.
Wouldn't buy that. So,
I like how you're upset about the movie that you're defending.
But what it's presented as is that, okay, like we're going to accept this human component, but it's a drawback, right? Like it's a drawback to the peak performance of the robots, as you would pronounce it in proper English.
I believe, yes.
Robots.
So the robots, they perform better, but they're lacking this, you know, feel bad after you shoot kid component, which is the primary reason we have RoboCop. Initially, right? Like initially, that's the problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dave, are we in agreement
that's the only
that's
problem they're
like
trying
at
to
least
solve?
preface at the beginning? Like there's the humanity.
The full-out robots with full AI. There's no control.
Right.
To
So let's say
thought
when he does, and there's actually two different scenes. One where it's full robot or more robot control, and one where it's more Murphy control. So the initial test with Rorschach when he takes on fucking 50 robots and just annihilates them. So clearly there is some kind of benefit with RoboCop than the basic Robo AI. And
they straight up say that he has a more advanced program at that point.
They spent more money on him.
Yeah.
That.
Oh,
That was the laziest bit of writing I think I've seen.
So then what?
So related to this, I have another overarching question. Is RoboCop actually a good cop? The answer for both cases is no. Absolutely not. Here's
I
my
would
case.
argue that
Okay.
he's a better cop in the first film.
In the
but-
first
okay,
film,
yeah.
there's like a guy robbing a gas station, and the outcome of that is that the gas station explodes.
yeah, but that guy deserved it because he was being mean to a nerd, learning about geometry, and he was part of that gang that shot off his hand and shot him up multiple times. So
We also saw some clutch
Right, well,
justice being served to the rapist.
the dick shot. Yeah.
That was pretty fucking funny.
Hey, actually, do you think that is the first glimpse of Murphy's humanity returning? The irony of shooting the dick off of a rapist is like the first like, this would be funny.
Yeah, because like he could have easily shot the dude in the head,
Or
right?
arrested
Like, he's got his
him, or
robot
like
targeting
pretty much
things.
anything.
Or
Tased him.
anything. But he shot his dick off.
And then, so in the second one, in the 2014 version, he uncovers all these corrupt cops. Like, there are those two detectives that are part of the drug runners. Instead of, like, arresting them, he just casually executes both of those detectives and then walks off and tries to...
he tases one and he shoots the other one in the shoulder. He doesn't kill either of them.
Shoots him in the shot. I thought he shot him in the head and just, like, kind of walked out and walked away.
No, there's
Sidebar,
That's
how
even
is his
better.
gun
I'm going with the
shooting...
headshot now.
Well, like, his gun sometimes shoots bullets that kill people, and sometimes it just tasers them, and I'm not sure
It's Star
why
Trek.
it does one or the other.
no. I'll clarify.
No, it's not.
20
It's RoboCop 2014.
2014 does not want to show any type of blood, so everybody gets stunned. That's it.
They
So-
did that for the PG-13. That also kind of ruined this movie.
Oh my god.
It limited the
You're
best.
defending Dave.
I know the best announcer was limited to one F-bomb only when he needed about 40. They took that away from him.
Yeah.
And that's a tragedy. The movie should have been hard R. To go back to Walker's original point of, is RoboCop a shitty police officer? At least in the first one, there's a scene where he goes out on his first patrol. Like, no supervision, nothing. They just, like, kind of send him out.
It's
It's
this
a great idea.
fucking killer robot cyborg, like, all right, we'll see what he's got.
Detroit's already in a bad state. What's the worst that could happen?
And he basically just goes on, like, a murderous, like, rampage. I think that's better police work than what we saw in the second film, because all he does is, like, taser the guy in the audience, and then you don't really see him do any other police work outside of
He
kill a
takes out
bunch
a
of
whole
other people.
cartel.
That's shoddy police work.
I agree.
You're supposed to do it with backup or whatever. I don't know.
You know what both had, though, is like the full willingness of security guards and other police officers to just shoot at police cars and police officers with like almost no question. They're like, all right, you know that hero RoboCop that we had literally on the stage with the chief about like 10 minutes ago? You now have to shoot a rocket launcher at him and other SWAT officers, even though you're like lowly paid security guards at this fucking office building. Like, these guys are taking a very big risk with very little information from a very biased source. And they're just like, yeah, fuck it. We're going to unload our assault rifles on these SWAT team members. Like, who the fuck are these guys? Like, what are they getting paid to be willing to do that?
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I have one question for everyone. Which movie had the better very beginning intro? Which one was better? And the correct answer is 2014, when the lion was coming and like roaring, and you just get Samuel L. Jackson doing like the la 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 la.
I actually didn't know what was happening with that. I thought we were having.
You don't get anything better than that.
Is that peak cinema? Did we reach the top of the mountain?
Okay, let's be clear here. Let's be clear here. I'm just defending this movie from the 1987 version, Adam. That's it.
I don't know what you're saying, Dave.
Yeah, I don't know either. You should do your closing statement now.
We should wrap it up.
I already did that like a while ago.
And so, yeah, like I kind of gave up on reading the script here, but let's jump back into it. The court is now in session. At this time, the jury has enough evidence to make a decision. However, prior to the deliberation phase, the court will hear closing statements from both parties on why their respective RoboCop film is the superior version. Dylan, please bury 2014 RoboCop so deep that nobody will ever find the body.
Okay. I mean, it took a simple premise, which is basically the same premise as like $6 Million Man or whatever. Damaged human gets rebuilt. He's better than before. We've seen it several times now. What was interesting about RoboCop is that it took this premise that probably would have worked in like a PG-13 setting, and they took it to like a very adult level and started grappling with some kind of interesting topics. Even if they grappled with them in like a very 1980s kind of superficial way, it was still like, you know, Detroit, urban decline, police corruption, drugs. It was very violent. And you really felt like the stakes were pretty high in the movie. And it did have that kind of 80s cut the bullshit, like, I don't care about the family, I don't care about love interests, like, this is an action movie, which is kind of why it works. So that's the basis. But what's really, kind of like threading the entire narrative is this idea of a cop who was a human kind of losing everything and then just very, very slowly regaining some of it. And it felt like the 2014 remake got every point. Like, it understood those points, but it just couldn't thread it through in a coherent way. It bounced around a lot. He had his humanity. He lost it. He got it back. He lost it again. He got some of it back. So the stakes just weren't as high. The PG-13 atmosphere just made it super generic. Like, it's just so forgettable because of that. Whereas there's quite a few scenes in the 1980, I have 89, but I think it's RoboCop's 87 scene that stood out. I mean, we didn't even mention the freaking mutant toxic waste guy, because the original just had these like crazy fucking scenes that were so cool. The original's by far from a perfect movie. Some of the character development like really sucks, but the plot makes up for it. And I know like really great movies, it's usually about like a great characters can carry pretty bland plots, but RoboCop had a great plot and it carried some pretty lame ass characters. And they had great production, great practical effects that holds up. So if you're ever going to watch RoboCop, watch the original. I rest my case.
Dave, please bust the ghost that is 1987 RoboCop and convince the court, and indeed the entire world, once and for all, that busted makes you feel good.
1987 RoboCop. It is a basic bitch. There is a lot of violence. Super, super simple plot. Like, it's basic. If you're looking for a basic experience, that's where you'll go. If you want to get more in depth and really talk about AI and the problems we have between AI and humanity, go rate 2014 RoboCop. It goes in depth about the struggles between humans and the inevitable coming of our AI overlords and how we're going to deal with that. I rest my case.
With that, the judge and jury will enter the deliberation phase. All three of us must reach a consensus. If one of us has terrible taste and believes that the 2014 RoboCop is better than 1987 RoboCop, we can't leave until we beat that nerd into submission. Adam, Walker, preliminary thoughts.
Can I take this at the beginning first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Of course.
Okay,
yeah.
So 2014, I think there is a universe in which this movie is interesting and like a useful update, you know, given how all the advancements and the changes in the world in the past 30 years since when the original was released. There's all this like globalism and the interaction of like technology and artificial intelligence and even some like militarized police stuff that even came out after 2014 that would be even more relevant now. The problem is that like none of that is like handled in the new film at all or handled well at all. So the original, like the 1987 version, is so much cleaner and more concise in its message that the 2014 was just a muddled mess, and it deserves to have its dick shot off.
Completely agree. Completely agree. Adam, your thoughts.
Well put, Walker. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I was trying to think about this throughout the week and just trying to remember what was basically happening with the 2014 movie. And the way that I can sum it up is 2014 felt like it was just using that nostalgia factor of the original to trick people to going in to watch this generic, heartless remake that actually didn't need to take place because it wasn't telling us anything new. It wasn't doing a new style on the original. It wasn't taking it in a different direction. I'm curious to see if they had something written for RoboCop 2 2016, whenever they were going to release that. Like, I want to know where they wanted to go with it because the original played on key ideas that you can see.
Hold on, can I stop you right there? The 1987 had nothing to do
you've
with
already
like,
made your closing
AI.
statements.
No, he's saying there's nothing different. The 2014 was about AI and robots like taking over. 1987 was just about what? Fighting crime. There was nothing about that. There was nothing about the advanced AI in it.
Judge, I'm going to continue.
You know what? Actually, you're completely right. No, he's completely right here. In a movie called RoboCop, I want it to be about artificial intelligence. I don't want to see him fight crime for more than maybe 2 or 3 minutes at a time.
No,
That's the thing. Okay, so yeah, Dave, I'm gonna. Okay, because like the thing is, we haven't even talked about like other flaws within this movie. We focused on like key topics. We didn't even talk about the pacing of 2014. The amount of times that we had to stop the film, be like, how much time has passed? Where are we at with this? And like, only 40 minutes in. That's it, and there's still 4 more hours of this movie to go. Like, it was ridiculous how they wanted to tell this story of a robot cop dealing with I don't know what, and I just didn't care. Even the fact that they're trying to bring in his family, it wasn't enough of a connection to make me go, yeah, I really want to see him become a human again. Because I didn't get that. I didn't get that from 2014, but at least with 1987, the last line of the movie is, I am Alex Murphy. You get to see him recover into something else. He is not just the machine. Where RoboCop 2014 just felt like it was just a shell. It's empty in every form. So my vote is against 2014. I am for 1987.
I don't know if there's much that I could really say about this that hasn't already been said. 2014, I think, could have been a good movie. I mean, they had the exact same writing team that worked on the first one, plus an extra guy. So I guess that extra guy like really fucked it up. I've heard that the director tried to do a lot of things, and the studio would always say, "Nah, you know, we got to do it this way, or you got to make these changes." And it feels like a movie that was made to sort of be paint by numbers, and the original is not. Like, it's really rough around the edges, and it's gritty and certainly well crafted, but not master crafted by any stretch of the imagination, right? And that is part of its charm in the original. That's why it's still talked about today, because it's not a perfect film. And 2014 is also not perfect, but in all the wrong ways that make it just fucking infuriating to watch and sit through. If I ever have to watch 2014 again, I don't know what I'm going to do, because I'm just going to fucking flip. I forgot how much I hated this movie. Dave, you and I went to the theater to see this film. And
really?
I had.
Should I just
we
clarify
did.
that the box office does represent money spent by Tom and Dave? Both of them have contributed to this box office total.
Man, I didn't know the writers wrote both the original and this one. Holy.
They did,
Wow.
and that changes your understanding, right?
What the fuck?
Because like what happened?
But doesn't it make
right?
sense
Like,
a little bit? Like think of the script of the original. Like I don't know if that script would have stood out to me as like, oh, this is great. I think a lot of it came through in the execution, and I think that's where the difference is.
100%
Yeah,
agree.
completely. Oh, but didn't we find out that like the director, that was his first movie? Like, isn't RoboCop 2014 his first one? Like, he just did like TV shows. I can't remember.
It was his first like
was his-
major Hollywood production.
Yeah.
Because Hollywood does that. It's like you do one TV show and then they give you like Star Wars Episode 8, and then you get The Last Jedi. And I don't like The Last
He
Jedi.
did a lot of Portuguese films.
Name one of them.
Elite Squad.
That sounds great. But the important takeaway
It
here
won a Golden
is
Bear.
Fucking
does that
golden
mean?
bear.
Golden Bear.
What the fuck is a Golden Bear?
That sounds like a
Prestigious is what it is.
Hogwarts award.
I think-
Like, Harry, you've won the golden bear.
The Berlin International Film Festival. Berlin gave him a Golden Bear.
Well, I mean, I have to believe that he is a somewhat competent director, because this movie doesn't read like a student film that was a fucking.
We
train
should
wreck,
point out the
right?
fucking cast of 2014, by the way. It is mega
Yeah.
studded. It's not like
But that-
by any stretch of the imagination. It was designed to be a blockbuster for sure.
Yeah.
And like they did pretty good acting. I thought the acting was all right. Like
Yeah, I thought the actors were
Gordon
great.
Nobody
Gordon.
phoned it
I
in.
love
like,
the.
great.
Does anyone know
Yeah.
the main actor's name? He's from Altered Carbon.
Joel Kinnaman.
Yeah, so they had Joel Kinnaman. They had Michael Keaton as one of the antagonists. They had Gary Oldman. They had Sam
Samuel
Jackson as
Jackson.
kind of very minor role.
They tried in some areas on this film, and I think if you were being approached, it's like, look, we want you to be in a RoboCop film. I love RoboCop. I'd still do it. If they said we're remaking RoboCop again, I would be on board to be in that movie, right? Even though 2014 very nearly killed the entire franchise. Also 2 and 3 in the TV show. Really, RoboCop only had one good film.
wasn't there a
So-
cartoon series too?
Probably. Yeah, that's the thing. RoboCop got That's the trick about watching the first RoboCop and then watching the reboot.
Yeah.
RoboCop had long since been neutered since 1987. Like, it wasn't 2014 that did
Yeah.
it. Like, their perfect example is the TV show, which is actually what I grew up watching, and that's how I knew RoboCop was from the TV show, which is like a syndicated, like, I don't know what you would compare it, like Chips or something. Like, it's super toned down. So then when I watched 1987 RoboCop and dudes are getting their dick shut off, and like this guy gets his hand blown off, and some dude gets mutated with toxic waste and then literally explodes when a car hits him. I was like, this is the greatest movie I've ever seen. Because it's just like, comparing that to the fucking syndicated TV show I watched, it was like, it was so different. Oh my God. So in defense a little bit of 2014, like, they didn't do it to RoboCop. It had long since been done to it.
Like, not all the blame lies squarely on their shoulders. I do think they produced a confusing turd of a movie, but it is watchable, and that's probably the best thing I can
that's
say
watchable,
about
for sure.
most movies, especially that we cover on this show.
It was confusing in the worst way too. That's the unfortunate part. Like, it wasn't confusing like Inception where it was great, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it strings you along thinking it might get better, and then it just ends.
Yeah, it looks good. Like
so
we
sad.
said, that one scene where they actually deconstruct him and it's just his lungs and his head and his hand. It's like, it's actually a pretty cool looking scene. So there's just enough there to keep you involved, but
Great effect.
I mean,
Yep.
it's like 40 minutes, maybe 45 minutes before he becomes RoboCop. So there's a long period where you're just like meeting Alex Murphy. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I'm not that interested in Alex Murphy. And then there's a pretty extended period of time in the middle of the movie where he's not around because he's damaged. And then it's just following other characters. So in a movie about RoboCop, like, we get an hour of him, maybe.
I would argue you only get about 20 minutes of RoboCop when he has his emotions turned off. That's when
Yeah.
RoboCop shows up.
That's the thing, and like,
Before it's Alex Murphy's lungs and
Right,
hands
exactly.
and
Yeah,
brain
even when you have
robots.
RoboCop, you don't have RoboCop. You have RoboCop being assembled, basically. Whereas, like, it's kind of like straight to the point in the original.
and this is one thing we didn't even discuss too. I feel like we should wrap this up because this conversation is just going to continue to carry on.
Yeah.
And we can definitely continue having this conversation. I recommend continue to record. But
Tom,
like,
can you bring us in and just spit that
Yeah.
verdict out and let's
yeah, Tom,
this
wrap it up and then we'll
shit show up.
keep this
All
chat
right,
going.
Okay. All right. Okay. With that, the case of which RoboCop is best has been settled. When someone asks you who is the actor who played RoboCop, you can confidently answer, Peter Weller, motherfucker. Court is adjourned. Bitches leave.